Right, so from water, we now move on to the greater planet. Okay? And obviously the greater planet is also 71% to 73% water. The greater planet, and what we're going to focus on now, is the Schumann Resonance. Now Schumann was somebody who was a lecturer at a university and didn't really realize the full impact of his work until a much later stage. In fact, it was another scientist who realized the full impact of his work at a later stage. But what was absolutely amazing, and I find truly mind-blowing, is that the Schumann resonance is around the planet, right? It's above the ionosphere, if I'm not mistaken, and I'll show you some pictures just now. And it's operating at 7.83 hertz. They've been able to measure the frequency. The most amazing thing is that the brain operates at 7.83 hertz as well. So there's a connection between human being and Earth. Okay. In fact, it's gone much further than that, and there's a lot of scientific research happening with random number generators and actually mapping out the emotional frequencies between human and Earth via the Heart Math Institute in California. And you can Google it and have a look. I would highly recommend that. So the story of human beings walking around aimlessly without direction and purpose is now absolute nonsense. Every person has a purpose. Every person is feeding this grid of information, and this grid is influencing everybody on Earth. So, and there's a lot of science that's still been researched around that, and I'll show you in the pictures to follow.
An unknown scientist is about to make a discovery that should have changed everything. His name was Winifred Otto Schumann. On the day in question, he was teaching his students about the physics of electricity, how a sphere within a sphere can create electrical tension, and subsequently, a frequency. Schumann's class had struggled to understand the subject, so to make it easier, the professor instructed them to imagine the Earth as one sphere and the ionosphere as another. He then asked them to calculate the tension that would exist in between. Having no idea himself, Schumann also began to calculate. Eventually, he arrived at a frequency of approximately 10 hertz. As incredible as it seemed to Schumann, our planet had a pulse, a measurable frequency that surrounded life on Earth. Although the professor was proud of his find, he didn't see it as a hugely significant one, especially as it was only published in a small science journal, confined to the back pages, under the heading of Schumann Resonance. It would take several years, and an incredible twist of fate, before the professor would begin to realize the true importance of Schumann Resonance. That twist of fate had begun 30 years earlier, with another German scientist by the name of Hans Berger. Using an EEG machine he had built himself, Berger had made the first ever recording of electrical frequency transmitted by the human brain. It was initially suggested the wave be named after the man who'd discovered it, but Berger, being a modest man, elected for an alphabetical name and called it the alpha wave. Shortly after Professor Schumann's discovery, one of Hans Berger's colleagues, a man named Dr. Ankermüller, happened to stumble upon a bedraggled copy of a small scientific journal. The exact same small scientific journal that Professor Schumann's discovery had been published in several years before. He read the piece several times, shaking his head in disbelief. He realized instantly the magnitude of what was in front of him. The frequency of the alpha waves, recorded by Hans Berger, were almost identical to Schumann resonance. The frequency of the Earth. Dr. Ankermuller immediately contacted Schumann to convince him to investigate further. Schumann agreed and worked alongside one of his students to refine his discovery. They studied in detail how tension is discharged by lightning in the Earth ionosphere cavity. Eventually, they came up with an exact frequency. The pulse of the Earth, Schumann Resonance, was exactly 7.83 Hz. The discovery was remarkable. Schumann Resonance wasn't just similar to the alpha waves of the human brain, it was identical. The brain's frequency, which controlled our creativity, our performance, our stress, anxiety, and our immune system, had somehow tuned in to the frequency of the planet. The pulse of the Earth had become the pulse of life itself.